Can success really breed success? Well, one car company thinks so, and we'll find out why this week on Motoring 2002.
TSN's Motoring 2002 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas. Keep a good thing going. Go Midas.
Over 55 million vehicles are manufactured on this planet each year. And when some car manufacturers are looking for ways to improve the actual process of building a better vehicle, many come to this Toyota assembly plant in Cambridge, Ontario. You know, this plant has been around since 1988 when it began producing the Corolla, the world's best-selling nameplate, with over 25 million sold in 142 different countries. Now, this plant has won numerous awards for quality, and we'll talk more about that later. But first, this Corolla is now sharing its platform with a new kid on the block, the brand new Matrix. And later we'll look at exactly what platform sharing is all about. Well, let's begin by checking out the new Matrix, which is entering what has to be the hottest segment in the industry today.
First of all, we're concentrating on a really new concept vehicle that will attract younger buyers, and obviously at the same time, a really unique design. When you look at the style of the vehicle, it's, first of all, our target from designing is, even it's a four-door with a hatch, we targeted for a coupe styling, but actually it has to be practical as a sedan, and also it needed the versatility of a wagon. It's a really crossover vehicle.
I guess it probably boils down to whether the really young kids think it's cool, like whether they, at first reaction, think it's a really neat car or not.
Everybody is chasing the ever elusive youth market. They want that young buyer. And I think probably the Matrix is certainly going to get its share of young buyers, but you know, interestingly enough, to run around town and grab things and load things in and out, drop off envelopes, pick things up. You don't have to be a kid to enjoy the versatility of the car, ease of entry and exit, back seat. Even for older people who don't bend as easily as they used to, they'll find that car very, very easy to get in and out of. Handles well. I like it.
We have a base front-wheel drive and upgrade sport engine, and also we have a four-wheel drive.
Suspensions in them all are set up so nicely that the cars are nicely balanced. Everything is nice and progressive. There's no sort of violent lift throttle oversteer or any nasty traits. In other words, they just seem to have got the suspension package in them pretty much dialed in.
If you had a really good quality tire, like a Blizzak or what have you, on a front-wheel drive and had reasonable driving skills, I don't think we'd ever be presented with any area where the front-wheel drive wouldn't take you. So if price is a barrier to you making the move, I don't think you need to worry about coughing up the extra ante.
I mean, I've always liked hatchbacks. I'm a small car enthusiast from way back, and the hatchback to me is the most sensible form of small car, just because of its versatility. But because it's practical doesn't mean it has to look boring or you know, uninteresting. And like the Protege 5, this has unique styling which you know, catches the eye. I mean, we've had people looking at it, you know, and the reaction has been favorable. I mean, people on the street sort of thing, you know. So yeah, I think the styling's going to be a hit. You know, it tracked nicely on the highway. There was no worries about the stability of the car. It seemed quiet enough and that sort of thing. And the seats are comfortable and the controls are functional. I particularly like the gear shift where it protrudes from the lower part of the center stack. It's a very good relationship to the steering wheel. I think it's a pretty decent package.
If we can get those kind of very young people like Generation X or Generation Y or the next generation, if they come into Toyota, I believe they will stay with Toyota for their life.
A lot of the kids, you got to remember, this is the second generation where Toyota, Nissan, whatever, has at least been one of the two cars of the family in many, many cases. The saying was, Mom, apple pie, Chevrolet, okay? And it's still that way to a certain extent. But maybe in a lot of households, it's Mom, apple pie, Toyota. Familiarity thing? Sure, they're going to get a good shot at it.
Did you ever see one of those old movies where Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland say, let's put on a show? Well, if they do put on a show, will anybody come? More later on Kenzie's Corner.
You know, many mourned the loss of the hatchback Civic when the current generation was launched. Well, mourn no more, and you can put those black armbands away, because this week we take a look at the all-new SiR hatchback. The SiR's new platform is much stiffer, 95% stronger torsionally and 22% better in bending than the previous three-door generation, something that shows up as much less body flex on a rough road. It also gives the suspension a very good base of operations. Through the pylons there was very little body roll and understeer, however I'll have more to say on this in a moment. This is also the first Civic to feature electrically power-assisted steering. It differs from a conventional system by helping the driver with a small electric motor rather than a power-sapping hydraulic pump. Not only is it precise, it has a very direct feel. You know, this thing's tremendous through the pylons, but there is a downside, and it comes in the form of the tyres. First of all, they're aesthetically rather weak and don't fill out the wheel wells. Secondly, the chassis and engine easily overpower them. So if you're looking for something a little more sporty, you should go for 16 or preferably +2 17-inch rims and a decent set of tyres. Then you'd be talking about a serious piece of machinery. Sadly, well, Honda only offers these 15 inches. The highlight and heart of the SiR is its 2-litre double overhead cam iVTEC engine, as it breathes livelier performance into the car, as in 160 horsepower at 6,500 RPM and 132 pounds-feet of torque at 5,000 RPM, and without sucking back the gas at an alarming rate. While the engine features VTEC, the latest system ups the technology count by adding variable valve timing. During low-speed operation, the majority of the incoming air charge is drawn through the primary intake valve, which improves combustion. At about 3,000 RPM, a second rocker engages with the first. As this is done, the lift and duration of both intake valves changes, increasing the airflow and consequently the power available across the middle and upper portions of the rev range. The variable valve timing advances or retards the intake cam over a 50-degree window, which cleans up the emissions while bringing that broad power band. The SiR is very definitely a driver's car. To begin with, the wheel's about the right size, the gauge is dynamic, and the shifter, in spite of its rather unconventional position, very easy to use, and the throw's nice and short. Then you've got the driver's and passenger's seats. Lots of bolstering in the base and through the lumbar region, but more importantly, a lot of support through the shoulder area. You've also got comfort items like power locks, windows, mirrors, cruise control, and air conditioning. But therein lies the rub. Whenever you select either of the defroster modes, the AC is automatically switched on. When you turn it back to warm your feet, it stays on. Now surely if you can turn it on automatically, you can turn it off automatically. The engine's engineering spreads the power over a generous range, the proof of which comes in the driving. Anywhere from about 4,500 RPM, the Civic revs freely to its red line and without showing any of the harshness so common in many fours. True, to benefit from the available power, you do have to row the 5-speed manual gearbox fairly vigorously. However, when all is said and done, this is half the fun. The lone drawback is that 120 kilometers an hour comes at 4,000 plus RPM. Let's just say a 6-speed box would not go amiss. If you decide to buy yourself a Civic SiR, you have to consider it more of a 2+2, primarily because getting back to the rear seat is awkward, and once you're back there, well, there's not a whole pile of space. However, round at the back, you cannot say the same thing. There's a real handle on the liftgate, and when you open it, you'll find plenty of cargo capacity with the seats up. Fold them down, and it grows appreciably. In short, it's a much better design than the previous vehicle. Stopping power comes from four-wheel discs and a decent anti-lock system. During the braking test, the stops remained fairly short and straight, with fade staying out of the equation. Unfortunately, the under-tired nature of the SiR means that the ABS kicks in with little provocation. A bigger set of boots would solve this situation. Dynamically, the Civic SiR is a delightful package. It's got a good chassis, great suspension, and a wonderful powertrain. Indeed, it's what the whole hot hatch concept is all about. Now, if you do go for those 17-inch wheels and tyres I mentioned, which I really do recommend, make sure they weigh about the same as these original equipment units. The reason is you don't want to increase the unsprung weight and upset that delicate balance.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns visible smoke in your vehicle's exhaust. Remember, all internal combustion engines produce water vapor as a byproduct of combustion, so a certain amount of white vapor exiting the tailpipe is not unexpected. The lower the temperature or the shorter your trips, the more white vapor you'll see coming out of that tailpipe. However, it should dissipate or break up rather quickly, and it should subside the longer the trip is. If you see white smoke exiting the exhaust that doesn't break up quickly, that lingers and is produced in huge quantities, you could have antifreeze burning in the engine. A blown head gasket or cracked engine casting could cause this. Blue smoke in the exhaust is an indication that you're burning oil. You could have worn piston rings, worn valve seals, a bad PCV valve, or anything that allows engine oil to enter the combustion chamber. If you see black smoke exiting the tailpipe, you're burning way too much fuel in that engine. If it's a gasoline engine, it's cause for alarm. You could have a plugged air filter or any tuning problem that causes the engine to burn an excessive amount of fuel. You're wasting a lot of fuel, polluting the environment, and you've given up a tremendous amount of fuel economy. It's something you want to address right away. Remember, when you take your car in for service, pass along to the service personnel the type of smoke that you've got, the color, and the conditions that the engine produces it under. While it's cause for alarm, it's also a valuable diagnostic tool. That's your Midas tip of the week.
We're back at the Toyota Assembly Plant in Cambridge, Ontario, home to the Corolla, Matrix, and Solera. Now, last year, for the fourth time in its history, this plant earned the J.D. Power Gold Award as the best quality assembly plant in North and South America. And as we're about to see, this plant is unique in many ways.
There's 3,000 employees here working on a two-shift rotation basis, A and B shift. Right now we're on B shift, which is 7 in the morning till 3:45, and A shift starts tonight at 5:45 to 2:30 in the morning. With production Saturdays and also some overtime, so the hours change there a little bit. Everybody's excited about the Matrix. We used to just produce the Corolla down the one line, and now we have the new vehicle. A lot of people are looking into buying them themselves. It's created quite a stir because of it's coming down the same line in assembly, where now you have to deal with different parts for different vehicles. We work on a just-in-time system where the parts for that individual car comes to the line when it is needed. So different doors, different hoods, different luggages will arrive at the process for the team member to install it just in time for them to do it when the car passes by their station. Yearly, around 200,000 cars we produce a year. Daily, out of the assembly shop, about 395, 400 per shift. So you're looking at 800 a day. About 40% of matrix.
Now in the near future, the Solara will be moving to another plant south of the border, but it will be replaced by the RX300, a vehicle that up until now has only been produced in Japan. All right, it's now time to head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardner.
Brad, this week we're going to answer some email from one of our viewers in Calgary, Alberta. His name's Adam Wood. He's recently purchased a used car, a 92 Honda Prelude with 160,000 K. He says the car's running well. However, he's got a problem with the distributor and how it mounts to the engine. He says in brackets, extremely bad oil leak. At first it was thought to be the O-ring on the distributor, which was replaced on 3 occasions. Each time after O-ring replacement, 300 to 500 kilometers later, the oil leak would reappear. He says that the Honda dealership believes the problem is with a warped mounting base on the distributor, and in order to repair that, he's going to have to replace the distributor at a cost of about $1,000. Well, a couple of things, Adam. First of all, interestingly enough, Honda is one of the last manufacturers to still use distributors in their engines. Many manufacturers have gone to what we refer to as distributorless ignition systems. This 91 Integra has a similar distributor location to our viewer's Prelude. This area here is the area where he's having problem with oil leakage, where the distributor meets the cylinder head. Now here's a distributor that I recently removed from a different engine, but it'll certainly do for our discussion here, and you can see that on the base of this distributor, where the mounting base is, there's an O-ring in a groove, and that O-ring is responsible for sealing the engine oil into the crankcase of the engine. Now, it's not uncommon for this O-ring to get baked hard as a rock. It'll actually come off in fragments on many cars when you remove it. In most cases, replacing it fixes the leak. In this case, our viewer has tried this and it hasn't worked. What I would suggest, assuming that the rest of the distributor is in viable condition, is that you take the O-ring out one more time, clean this area very well with alcohol or brake parts cleaner so there's no traces of lubricant, clean the bore in the engine where it goes so there's no lubricant there, put a bead of engine silicone, high quality, high temp engine silicone in that groove, put a new O-ring in the groove, put another pass of silicone around it, make sure that you don't touch any of the silicone with oil or get it contaminated with any other lubricant. Push it back into the engine, reset the ignition timing, and I think you'll find that your oil leak is going to completely disappear. Now, engine silicone at one time was just thought of as a makeshift repair 15, 20 years ago, but in the last 10 or 15 years, you see all kinds of engine manufacturers that actually use high-temp engine silicone in place of gaskets. For example, on a V6 or V8 engine, the intake manifold valley end seals, which used to be neoprene rubber, were replaced many years ago by a bead of silicone that's installed right at the factory, and when that intake manifold goes down there, it actually glues the intake manifold to the engine block. And if you do a good job of applying that silicone and don't contaminate it, it's a perfectly effective seal. And this is what I suggest our viewer try on his distributor. Now, whenever you've got an unaccounted for engine oil leak, one of the first things you want to do is check the crankcase ventilation system. Make sure that you don't have a bad PCV valve or some problem in the crankcase ventilation system that's causing a buildup of pressure in the crankcase, because that can drive oil past perfectly good gaskets or O-rings. That's one thing you always want to check for. Also, make sure that you're using a high-quality, high-temp silicone designed for sealing an engine. You don't get the same stuff that you use in your bathroom to seal around plumbing fixtures, okay? I think you're going to find, Adam, that'll fix your problem and probably save you $1,000 for a new distributor. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2002.
The most recent Canadian International Auto Show in Toronto attracted almost 300,000 visitors. And why not? It's a great show. We've been to the auto shows all over the world. The Toronto show looks really good. We even had some American journalists up this year, and of course a lot of Americans are surprised that we have electricity up here, but even they were impressed. But you know, there's some cracks starting to appear in the whole auto show thing. Torino, Italy has long had one of the great auto shows, particularly from a design perspective. This year, it was canceled. 27 different companies decided it just wasn't worth it. Mitsubishi, which is just starting an approach to Canada now, well, they've pulled out of the Birmingham, England Motor Show this fall because the 700,000 pounds it was going to cost them, they feel they can spend that money better elsewhere. Now, of course, auto shows aren't there just to appeal to the paying customers. Frankly, they're put on to impress us. Auto journalists come from all over the world to see the latest and greatest at these shows. But even there, car companies are starting to wonder, because if you're one of maybe 15 world premieres at a show like Detroit, you might get 2 seconds on Motoring 2003, whereas if you introduce your car a couple of weeks early, you might get an entire feature, or you might get a cover in a big magazine. So where are auto shows going? I mean, from our perspective, we could practically see an auto show from our office. It's all broadcast live on the internet. We can get all the speeches and stuff. We can get the press information downloaded to us over our phone lines. We could even make a deal with the airline companies, say, hey, we'll save you the fuel of flying us there. You give us the frequent flyer points, we'll call it square. I haven't been able to figure that one out just yet. Now, I mentioned this idea to one of the younger guys in our business, 25-year-old kid. He's really computer literate. He knows all about the internet. And he said, I wouldn't want to do that. I want to go and see those cars in the flesh. I want to kick those tires. I want to really get a feel of what these cars are like. Well, you know, out of the mouths of babes. If he thinks auto shows have a future, who am I to argue? I'm Jim Kinsey.
Well, that's it for this week. Before we go, we want to thank everybody here at the Toyota Assembly Plant in Cambridge, Ontario for their hospitality. You know, the Corolla and Matrix continue to go down the same line, sharing that Corolla platform. And when it comes to the Matrix, they hope to build about 70,000 plus this year. And the feeling is that dealers across North America will probably sell everyone they can get. And of course, Graham Fletcher will take a closer look at the new Matrix on a future test drive. So make sure you join us for that as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
It's a modern American convertible.
You'll see a lot of design cues, the overall shape of the vehicle, and a lot of details all the way around the vehicle that are based on the Tri-5 Chevys, but done in a very fresh way.
TSN's Motoring 2002 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas. Keep a good thing going. Go Midas.